Welcome to workshop 3. This is the final workshop of our 3-part workshop series on farm to grocery. We're glad that you stuck with us and you're here, and we have a couple speakers lined up today that we're excited to hear from. We'll start with a welcome and a little conversation on finding farmers. Then we'll have the speakers address marketing, merchandising, and product handling, that kind of content. And hopefully we'll have time for a packaging activity. The priority is as spending time in question and answers with the speakers. So just kind of giving you a heads up on that, with some potential discussion at the end and closing questions as we close up this workshop series. So today we're looking to understand effective strategies for marketing and merchandising local products and identifying ways in which to improve product marketing and merchandising. And like I said, I wanted to include this slide on finding farmers. I put a tab on the Google site that has all of these links that you can click on and browse through. And I sourced some of these links from some colleagues. Last time there were a few of them that were mentioned as well. And so I thought, it would be useful to have them all in one place. And so this will be made available, again, through the Google site. It's also being recorded. And it will be on the RSDP YouTube channel. All of the recordings will be. But a few to mention, the Minnesota Wholesale Grown Directory currently has, I think it was like 180 results right now. And those are farmers who have signed up, who said that they are selling at a wholesale level in some capacity. So I wanted to make that note. That's a different directory than the regular Minnesota Grown Directory. And Helen Shones and Karen Lanthier are helping gear up that directory, and they did a survey recently, and so they're looking at ways to expand it as well. There's a few more here: the Farm Bureau, Farm Fresh Directory, Minnesota Farm Direct. There are also some regional databases. The ones that I found in particular are Southeast, a couple there you can see, Driftless Grown, Cannon Valley Grown, as well as Northeast. The Finland Food Chain has been doing some great work on collecting and putting together those farms who are in the area, as well as national databases. And the national databases have a little bit less farms like collectively. Then another way to connect with farmers, the partner on this project is the Sustainable Farming Association. And they have chapters all across the state. And while they don't have a kind of a directory put together, they do of the chapters. You're able to connect with the chapters and reach farmers that way as well. And then farmers markets are another way to connect with farmers in a very local, person-to-person way. And I wanted to open it up. What did I miss? What are other ways to connect with farmers? Briefly, if anyone wants to put in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. If anyone has any other ways.
Farm Bureau and Minnesota Farmers Union. I'm sorry if I missed them if they're here.
I didn't get the Farmers Union.
It's a good one, especially for smaller farmers.
Sure. Well, feel free to, if any dawn on you, go ahead and stick them in the chat, and we'll make sure they get on the collective list on the Google site, again, which will be shared out with all participants. And I put a couple screenshots that kind of show the first one is the Minnesota Wholesale Grown Directory, and the next one is Minnesota Farm Direct. So just a few screenshots as well. All right. So I have up first of our speakers, Renee Wisnant, who is the marketing manager at Lake Winds Food Co-op. Renee grew up in rural Minnesota and has fond childhood memories of building forts in her grandparents' unused corn crib and delivering grandpa lemonade in a canning jar on hot summer days. She has a background in TV news, public relations, and digital marketing. As the marketing manager at Lake Winds Food Co-op, Renee oversees the co-op's marketing initiatives, including email, website, social channels, in-store signage, advertising, and more. And so we're really happy to have Renee here to speak to local food marketing and share some of her experiences, insights, and I'll stop sharing now. And then Renee, you should have permission.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you, Ren, and thank you for that nice introduction. As she mentioned, I'm Renee. I'm with Lake Winds Food Co-op, and today we're going to talk about farm to grocery and give a little marketing 101. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, great.
Yes, so
okay,
just so
great.
you know, it's not on the presentation mode. It's just, and it doesn't matter, whatever works best for you.
Sorry about that. I should have done that. But I'll just keep going. And I do want this to be a conversation. So if anyone has questions or if you want to interrupt me, please feel free. I'm not sure. Everyone has like a different comfort level with digital platforms and social channels and whatnot. So I'm going to try to kind of have a general medium introduction here. So if I'm going too high or low, please feel to stop me and let me know. So on my agenda, what I have is we're going to talk a little bit about content creation, which is like what to say and who do you say it to. So it's a little bit about your audience and keeping them in mind. We're going to go over our marketing and communication channels, which is where to say it. And then we're going to kind of put it together. I found some examples from local farms and organizations that I think are doing a good job. So we'll look at examples and then talk about resources and have questions at the end. So first thing again is content. And what exactly do we mean when we say content? And that's your message and the things you create. And that could be, you know, different words, it's photos, it's videos, it's email, infographics, quizzes, graphics, all those things that you create, we call content. So I'm just showing here a few things from Lakewood. So we create a quarterly newsletter called Refresh. We have social posts, including things with recipes and using local ingredients in those recipes. We recently did a whole video campaign with giving, basically I went into stores and had our employees give eco-friendly trips. So it's eco-friendly tips about Earth Day. So normally we have an in-store Earth Week celebration, and since we're still not having in-store events, this was a way for our team to connect with our customers and just give like tips and tricks and ways to live more green friendly during this month. And we also, of course, we have a website with content. So all of these different things, blog posts and homepage content, this is all generally what we call content. And one thing, as I think, if you're working as a farmer, you want to think about what is your differentiator and what makes your farm unique. And that could be so many things. If you're a small scale family farm, are you organic or sustainable, multi-generational? Are you a member of a historically underrepresented group? Are you bigger and you employ people in your community? Do you educate or mentor other farmers? Like there's so many different things you have that make your farm unique, and that really makes you special. So that's a good thing to keep in mind when you're creating this content. And the next thing is, who is your audience? Is it your CSA members? Is it your community in general? Is it retail or a school or campus or an organization? Are you selling to restaurants or different businesses at farmers markets? So whoever your audience is will affect somewhat the content that you create. And then when to say it. And year-round is the best time to say your content. And when you're farming, you need to prepare ahead for the busy season, because I know that it is crazy busy, and the last thing you might have time to do is to think about communicating with your audience. But one thing you can do is create kind of a content calendar. So I'm just showing like the months across the top and then your channels on the side, which in this case, we're talking about like a website or a blog, your social channels, maybe email. And then you can talk about like questions to answer, things like that. And you can create a little Excel spreadsheet with that if you want. And you can even plan ahead or pre-write, like you know that you're going to be planting at this time of year, you're going to be harvesting at this time of year, you're going to be planting at this time of year. And so you can go ahead and almost pre-write part of it and then fill in the specifics as you go. So during the quiet months, you can write ahead and work ahead so that it's not so daunting when you're in the midst of harvest season and things are crazy. You can also repurpose and update content you've written previously. So that can help you, if you think about maybe you wrote a blog post last year and you can take that idea but give it an update and even just do like updated on today's date and then like here's what's going on this year. So you can always repurpose your content, and something short is better than nothing. And again, with the channels and where to say it, I'm going to focus today on the digital channels of your website. If you have one, social channels like Facebook, Instagram, maybe YouTube, and email. And then the in-person channels, I would say, is like your CSA box. Is there a thank you note that you want to give, or just a little note, a physical, what's new on the farm? It could be a little postcard with like, what's growing, what's the latest news, little tidbits like that. And then also like a farmer's market, you could have good signage and different takeaways, learn more little things you could hand out at a farmer's market. For content strategy, if we start with a website, your homepage really should be about you and your story. Again, those differentiators and what makes you different, including photos and visuals, like a photo's worth 1,000 words. So really use lovely photos. Smartphones today take such great photos. Like you don't need a fancy camera. Just use your smartphone and they take like high resolution photos, and you might actually want them small, save them as a smaller size for your website, but I mean, they'll take clear, lovely photos. And then you might want to have a blog or like a news section. And my example was like, one way to break down the content you create is, for example, you write a blog post or a news update or something once a month. And then it could be like 4 things new on the farm this month, or top 4 vegetables that are coming into harvest, or it could be top 4, top 5, 10, something, and then you break those down, and each one is a social post. So you could have each of, like for us, we've done in the past, like top 10 tips about something, and then you can pull some of those up for your social posts just to make it easy. So you don't have to recreate the wheel. You're taking one big piece and breaking it up into smaller chunks so that you're creating less work for yourself and working more efficiently. You could also take one quick on the farm video, like it could be a beautiful sunrise and just the natural, the crickets and the animals, and just one video. That's it. That's your content for the day or for the week if you want. And you can also take those few things and put them together into an email. So you can have your blog post, you can have a little video, a little like message, maybe it's a recipe, and that's your email. So you can really try to consolidate the work as much as you can to make it easier on yourself. Having to contact us and like how to shop, how to find you is really important, because people want to know how they can support you and your farm and buy the food that you grow. And then obviously linking to social channels is nice. So if someone finds you on a website, they can find you. Like, where are you on Facebook? They want to be able to find you on Instagram and your different channels that you participate in. Let's pause there. Are there any questions so far? All right, I know I'm going through kind of a lot. Now, with content strategy, continuing to social channels, some of the best practices for your social channels is to post consistently. Now, whether that's once a week or twice a week, that's up to you what that frequency is, but to be consistent, because if you do like 5 in 1 week and then there's nothing for a few months, that you're not going to build that consistency with your audience. Like, they want to know when to expect to see another message from you. So posting consistently is really important. You can also think about publishing a variety of content types. I pulled an example from The Good Acre, who I really like The Good Acre. So you can see they've got just, words. They've got photos of bags of produce. They've got jars. They've got these nice variety of content. So there's lots of different fun things you do, and I have some more examples we'll dive into later. It could be like our favorite recipe, or different questions. You could even ask crowdsource questions like what vegetable are you looking forward to most this season? Or there's so many things you can ask your audience as well. And then make sure you're responding to questions and comments. If someone's asking you a question, try to get back to them and respond in a short amount of time if you can. And then with email, email is another great way to connect with your audience. You can ask people, hey, sign up for my e-newsletter, sign up for emails. And then again, with maybe it's once a month or whatever the time that works for you, you just send them a little email. And again, it can be just taking your social posts and things you've done and putting those in the email with another, maybe a new recipe or one other thing, but really, again, trying to streamline the work and making it not so daunting for yourself. So now I was going to talk, showing some examples. So Ceylon Rolling Acres, I met farmer Leslie. She was a recipient of last year's Lakewinds Organic Field Fund grant. And so we went out and took video of her and her farm, and I got to know her and started to follow her on social, and she's doing some really great things. And I'll maybe share another screen in a minute, but she posts regularly, lots of farm news. She does videos of the goats and the farm dogs and just doing chores, lots of beauty shots of the farm. She's got different types of content like an ag quiz. She had a baby goat due date contest this spring, which was super cute. And then quick updates. She recently, there's just like a lightning show. She just took video of the lightning on the farm, things like that. So it's super cute. And I'm going to share my other screen in just a moment here. Let's see. Sorry, I've got it on a different screen. All right. So can you see that screen?
Yes.
Is it can you see the Ceylon Rolling Acres?
Yep.
Okay, good. So here's the website here. And then if you look at Leslie's Instagram feed, oh, so even here you can see here's just the light, it's like video of the lightning. That could be a sunrise, that could be anything easy. It's just last night's lightning show. She's got great content where it's got words over, and there are a lot of free tools you can use to take a picture and put words over it, like Canva and other graphic designs. A lot of those tools are free as well. So you can make some really cool looking social posts with words and photos. You can see down here, we've got the due date contest. So she had a cute little giveaway highlighting some products with the baby due date contest. So lots of cute, I mean, who does not love a human kid with the goat kids? Oh my gosh, adorableness. Like it's super, super fun. So she does a really great job. And I think that people would, any of you, if you want to see some good examples of that. She even talks about challenges. She has some little kids were not doing so well, and she talked about some of the challenges on the farm. Got stuck in the mud one day. So you might not think this is interesting, but people who do not live on farms is like, oh my gosh, that's fascinating. So everyone else, you might think, oh my gosh, why would I tell my audience about this? But non-farm people really do find it fascinating. These little things in your day-to-day life can become what you put out as your content. All right, so I hope that was helpful. Any questions at this point? Okay, I'll go back to my other screen here. All right, then I had another example of Little Big Sky. I'll just pull that over. They're another farm that I got to meet through the Lakewinds Organic Fields Fund. And look at this lovely photo. Do you know where your veggies come from? Shares available, like simple, lovely post. They've got cute kids. There was another one I really liked, which was this one. We want to be your farmers. Like that's a clear, direct ask. We want to be your farmer. And I thought that was so clever, this cute photo, and just that those words were just really resonating. And they had 147 people like that. I mean, it really does get results. Just photos and words are a really fun way to do that. And again, you just, some day-to-day life photos on the farm really they do a really good job of that. And I think that's something that's attainable for most folks to be able to do. All right, let's come back. All right. So again, they're asking for action. The CSA sign up, photos of farm and food, photos of people. People's faces do really good in social things. So even if it could be like, in my mind, you've got your lovely farm photos, you've got the animal photos, you've got, and then people doing things, people's faces and smiles do very well on social to connect with your audience. They love to see people's faces and know who you are. Like, who is this farmer? Like, I want to see your face. I want to see you, you know, on your farm, and I want to connect with you. And going back to those differentiators of what makes you unique is, I don't want to say you're selling yourself, but you are selling like your farm as something that's special and makes people want to connect with you. It's like that emotional part. Like, car commercials don't sell cars. They're selling like the feel of speed on the road, or like driving that cool car. And what people are buying from you is like, oh, I love this farm. I love this farmer. I want to buy vegetables from that person. I want to buy goat meat from her, because they connect with you, and you feel like you get to know them over these social channels. And I get that it takes some vulnerability to put yourself out there, but people care about you and they want to know who you are. And then they feel good about buying what you grow. So there's my little like, oh, look at how cute this stuff is. People just love it. All right. Oh yes, and I also talked about include faces. This is some Lake Winds data we did from February. And like, our social posts that had people's faces in them did twice as good as like the lovely food photos. I mean, these photos are lovely. Like, who doesn't love a nice warm bowl of chili and a surf and turf? But people's faces tend to do much better. And again, why the differentiators, focusing on the customer, how do they connect to you? And then what are their questions and how do you add value to them? For example, we recently launched Kernza grain in our stores for perennial pantry, the Kernza perennial grain. And, you know, Kernza is $10 for a bag of Kernza. You need to make people care. To spend $10 for a bag of Kernza when they can get other grains for a much cheaper price. Like, you need to tell that story. Like, why should anyone care about Kernza? Why are they going to spend that money? Well, here's a picture of the farmer. You get to know this farmer. Here are the environmental benefits. Here's what it looks like on the shelf so you can find it. And then here's a way to use it. We have some recipes about Kernza. So again, trying to add value to their life on telling our customers, here are all these great benefits of Kernza, how to use it, what makes it special, and why it's worth that extra cost when other things on the shelf are not as expensive. And my other things, like to constantly learn, be open to trying new things. I know like every farmer is constantly trying new things. And how do you get your farm out there? You could be a guest on someone's podcast. There are other ways to maybe that's an opportunity that comes your way. Maybe you don't want to do it, but try something new. Be a guest on a podcast. Collaborate with other farmers. And you can be an expert for someone, and then they can, you know, promote you, and you can share their social posts and they can share yours. You might want to experiment on Pinterest or give cooking tips and recipes and how-tos and other education that helps people. And then there are other marketing resources like Sprout Social. They have some social media basics, and there's some other good resources out there if you need writing tips. And I can try to see if I can share that later too. All right, and then my other thoughts are, again, I know everyone's so busy, it's hard to find the time to do this work, but you could outsource and find other people to help you. Maybe you have younger family members who are super savvy, and if you trust them to do some posting or at least take some photos and create some stuff that you can then use. College kids or interns, have them help you do some of this work. You could do a swap if you know someone who's a photographer or they do social media for their job. Maybe you could do a swap and they get a discount on a CSA in exchange for doing some of the work for you. As I mentioned, every day is interesting, and your audience probably finds things fascinating that to you are so ho-hum and everyday, but don't be afraid to share that and just see how it performs. So when I say performs, like likes, engagements, when you can kind of get a feel after a while, like, wow, everyone really liked this post. You might not expect it, but that's because your audience sees things as being maybe more interesting than you do from your perspective. Yeah, and like even like in the winter, what do you say in the winter? Well, you're planning your farm, you're looking ahead. When you run into challenges like Leslie getting stuck in the mud, fun stuff, quick videos are ways that you can engage with your customer without having to do a lot of work. You can also do some use tools to help, so you can schedule your posts ahead of time. You can add words to your pictures using Canva. I also mentioned Snappa and Crello. And if there's things you want to do and you don't know, just Google it. There's like 5,000 posts on like how to create a good social post, how to add words to your photos. Like there's lots of resources out there. You might get sucked in. So just look at a couple, and then I think experimenting and testing is key. And then you'll see what people are starting to like. And I'm at my time limit. So are there some questions we have at this point? I'm sorry, that was a lot to throw out at all of you. So I'd love to hear if you have any questions or other comments.
We have one question that could you copy and paste the links into the chat that you showed?
Absolutely, I will do that right now.
And Ryan commented, my most popular YouTube video is us planting on a pollen transplanter.
Right. And I think it just, yeah, again, testing and seeing what people like, you'll get a good vibe after a while, like what your audience, like what resonates with them and what they find interesting to see. So, and then I'm putting those links in the chat. Right, that are good. Let's see, last one. All right, and anyone, feel free, it's reneew@lakewinds.com. Feel free to email me if you have any questions or if anything else occurs to you later. I'm happy to be a resource. And thank you for listening and attending.
We have one question that popped up, and we might have. We'll see if more people. Feel free to put your comments in the chat, or you can pipe up. But here's a question: my business was incorporated in 2020. I don't have a website. How important is it versus just doing social? Website versus social.
I think because the social channels are getting more robust, you don't have to have a website as long as you make sure you include like how to find you, how to sign up, a good vehicle. And someday you might want to have a website just so you can post like those, like an article or blog post or recipes and other things that are helpful to connect with folks. So I think that you don't have to have one right away, but I do think it's a benefit to you to have that in your long-term goal because you have more. You can create more robust content on the website than you're limited to within a social platform like Facebook.
And I have a question for you, Renee. Do you, like on the Lakewinds social media or other platforms, do you frequently like share out farmer? Like do you like link to or like amplify or promote other farmers' social media? Like sharing,
we do,
or?
Yeah, we do. Sometimes, more often we are sharing like little profiles on the farmers whose produce we sell in the store. Yeah. So a lot of times it'll be like, hey, meet this farmer. Like for the Kernza, we did highlight one of the farmers and we did an interview. So we had a blog post that we promoted and then linked to that. And we do it also, so Lakewinds also helps with Local Food is Essential. We are kind of volunteer our time for that group, and that's a really good platform. You could contact Local Food is Essential even on Facebook and be like, hey, Local Food is Essential, I'm doing this, and that they could promote that because Local Food is Essential is always looking for local farmers to promote.
Cool. Do you also do any like print in-store promotion of farmers?
We do. We have large, we call them farmer profiles. So like if you walk into our produce department, we have big signs up above that show a photo of the farmer and a little map of where their farm is and a couple words. And this is my cute story. So apparently one day there was a shopper was like standing looking at the photos and was like, is that a real person? It's not a model. And the team was like, that's a real person. Yeah, their farm is in Winona or whatever. It was like the customers really thought they were fake, but like, no, those are actual farmers who grow this pepper right here.
Oh, that's great.
And then we have them like in dairy and meat as well. And then we have some in our wellness department. We have a number of local makers of like beauty and skincare, and we have their photos up there. So we do have them. And then at the shelf, we've got little ones like in the grocery aisle. So we really are trying to highlight the farms and the local farmers and makers, because that's what that's a priority for Lake Winds, is sharing those stories. And that's how we're connecting with our customers, is by highlighting these amazing local farmers and makers doing really cool, unique things.
Very cool. All right, last call for questions. Feel free to unmute yourself or type it in the chat.
Renee, could you please post your email address?
Oh, sure.
Find it there. Thanks.
All right. And if something comes to you later, Renee's email is there. So thank you again, Renee, for sharing, and we really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. It was really nice to speak with all of you. Thank you.
So now we will turn to Ryan. Ryan Pesch conducts trainings and applied research on issues of economic development, tourism, and business development. One focus of his research is the local food market, and he's conducted extensive trainings for producers on direct farm marketing techniques, pricing, and merchandising. He lives in Leda Township in Otter Tail County with his wife and 3 kids, and operates Leda Farm, a commercial vegetable operation, in addition to his extension work. And so Ryan, if you would like to share your screen, you're welcome to do so.
Great, thanks, Ren. And it's Lida.
Excuse me, my
I accept
apologies.
that too. That's all good.
I've known Ryan since I was a freshman in college. I might apologize, Ryan.
No problem. It's no big deal. Yes, I hail from Lida Township here. So you always, for those of us in rural areas, we try to tell the world about our township, and nobody really seems to care or be able to place it. Imagine that, right? Lida Township, like, well, where's that? But yes, it's good to be here. Ren was saying a lot of you are, we're maybe more, we may have an odd grocer or so here, but there's more growers and grocers. So I was trying to, as Ren explained, I'm kind of coming to you as Ryan Pesch. Sometimes I get confused who I am. Am I a grower? Am I an extension educator? I don't know. So I'm primarily speaking to you as Ryan Pesch, grower, and my experience in that. But I've also, I'm the last founding board member of a food co-op in Detroit Lakes called Manna Food Co-op. And so I'm also kind of a part-time grocer lately. So in some respects, I don't know. I'm like usual, trying to speak out of both sides of my mouth as we think about this whole farm to grocery thing. And especially if you're a grower, how does this, or a farm operator, how does grocery as a market fit in? And my main thing that I phrase here is let's get to know one another, because I think we're pretty much shooting for the same thing, right? There are different scales, both of farms and of grocers, and in groceries, and there's different markets, right? So we heard from Renee, our friend from a very esteemed co-op in the Twin Cities, Lake Winds. We could be talking about the Wedge. We could talk about Mississippi Market. That's going to look very different than if you're selling to mom and pop grocery in, well, Big Stone County, right, Kathy? Or or Chippewa County. I mean, there's a lot of things at play, but I do think that whether we're producers, and I'm a produce guy, so I'm in love with produce pictures. I'm sorry. Or you're a grocer, whether you're large or small, we're kind of shooting for the same thing. We want to have quality produce that our end customers say, ooh, I want that, right? So I got this beautiful picture of this from some green grocer who got a little too excited one day and did like the world's best produce display on the left, right? Isn't that amazing? And then here's my little farm stand at Falls Baking in Fergus Falls. But again, different scales, right? Different looks. But what I'm doing as someone who's direct marketing on my little farm stand at the bakery is much the same as what that greengrocer is trying to do. We want to have well merchandised product that captures the customer's eye in a very competitive retail landscape. All of our grocers, whether they're small or big, are living in a situation where they're needing to compete against some of the largest corporations on earth. And that's difficult. And those of us who direct market, we sort of fly under the radar and sort of grow, sort of sell be underneath that. But when we start selling to the grocery arena, I really like us to kind of respect, have some respect for the grocer situation and trying to do just what we're trying to do in terms of merchandising food well, so that hard to find and compete for customer buys from them as the grocer, as opposed to some other grocery. And that's what we're doing at a farmer's market, selling CSA or what have you. So I try to break this down into kind of a few major lumps here. And the first one is primarily, it's all kind of geared towards us as operators on standards. Is I think that's something that we need to really understand as we approach a grocery market or a grocery buyer. We need to understand that customer. Second, communication. And third, I think there's really something you said about a long-term partnership with our grocers. So standards, right? If you were going if you want somebody to be your customer and you want to sell them something, you need to understand them and you need to understand their products, right? If I was a used car dealer in Wichita and then I decided I'm going to sell luxury brand BMWs or something on Rodeo Drive in LA, they're both cars, yes, but I need to understand there's some real different assumptions about what's a standard in those situations, right? In Wichita, hey, the radio works, I'm good, maybe. On Rodeo Drive, they might have some real different expectations. And I think one of the things we need to do is try to get into the mind and understand our retail grocer customer. And the first way to do it is observe. And let's start by observing the product that's on the shelf. You don't even need to have a conversation with a grocer at all. Go spy on grocery stores. Just go in there and say, oh, I'm going to sell carrots to a grocery store. What does that look like? And I guarantee you, it does not look like the carrots on the right. No. We have had carrots show up in like dirty plastic bags that look like carrots on the right. We can't sell them at a grocery. It ain't going to work. If you want to sell a carrot, look at the carrots on the left. Those are the ones currently being sold in the store. They don't need to be perfect. They don't need to be carbon copies, but my goodness, they have to look more like the ones on the left than the ones on the right. And that's just kind of understanding what you're shooting for. Another part of the standards is to ask, right? We can observe, we can kind of see the product, we can kind of see the level of quality that we might need to sell and to a grocer. But part of it is also just understanding the standards of such as, what is a case of lettuce, right? So that you're speaking the same language as a grocer. So if you go to the grocer, you're like, hey, you need a case of lettuce, and you show up with the stuff on the right, which is a harvest crate filled with lettuce, in your mind, that might be a case of lettuce. But in the grocer's mind, a case of lettuce is a 24 count of lettuce packed the way it is on the left in a wax box that they're going to store in a walk-in cooler and then take out and deal with as time goes on. You need to understand what that means. And so that you're on the same page about what the standard is. And any good grocer, if they want to humor you, they'll be like, come on down, I will show you what a case of lettuce looks like. That's a case of lettuce. Because if you say, hey, I'll sell you a case of lettuce for $33, and then you show up with the stuff on the right, it's not comparable. And it's difficult for the grocer to say, yeah, actually, I should get lettuce from that person again, because they don't have a comparison. There's typically a lot of product that's going through a given grocery and a lot of different suppliers. And it's important that you kind of understand the standard, so you're speaking the same language. Part of the standards also is the process. And part of the process is for those of us that maybe are just so in love with direct marketing that we don't leave a farm stand, a CSA, or a farmer's market. We need to understand that we're essentially acting as wholesalers, and we need these consistent things that wholesalers do with grocers in terms of building a selling relationship are very important, such as I am dropping off, I am actually leaving you an invoice. I am not just dropping off to any random person whenever, and not even leaving a listing, even if it's on a random piece of paper about what I actually left and how much it cost, because it's going to be hard to pay you when that doesn't happen. And that does happen. What is the process for checking in? Who should this get checked in with? Should you budget a little bit of time so that you can hand the invoice and that green grocer can say, yeah, oh yeah, all these things are here. Great, thank you, received. And it goes into a pile to get paid. Consistent communication. What's the life of a grocer? Life of a grocer is consistent ordering on a weekly basis. When they're working with a wholesaler, they are putting in a call by 5 p.m. on Thursday, every single Thursday on 5 p.m. And if your communication style is like, oh, I tried them at 10 at night, they weren't there, so I tried them at 8 the next morning, and then I tried them on a Saturday, and I tried them on a Tuesday, and then you're frustrated and they're frustrated, that's not consistent communication. It isn't part of the flow of the grocery world. And certainly, I think the biggest thing is consistent quality. So don't show up with those scrunty, weird looking beets or carrots and just say, hey, it's good enough, it's local. You owe me, you should buy it. Second is this issue of communication. It gets a little bit into the pricing. And I think there's a lot to be said about grocers and growers being good partners, but we just have to have sort of this upfront negotiation and understanding about how our two businesses interact. I do think there is room for any of us, even if we're the smallest of growers, to add value to what's going on in grocery, depending on the scale and needs of that grocer. For example, we'll just go back to my example of this or case of lettuce. For some grocers, half cases are great, right? They don't want a 24 case account case. They would prefer to have 12. You're selling small cases, even if it's a little bit more than half price, is actually a good thing for that grocer because they don't have the shrinkage of the other half of the case that goes bad. Some of it could be name recognition. You as a farm operator do have a name recognition, and you've been doing it a while. You're having your products in the store of the grocer might be a good thing for that grocery in terms of moving getting traffic into their store. Or you might be able to offer them select varieties and types that allow their store to stand out. And on the grocer side, they can support that grower by some kind of consistent purchasing in comparison to how they're typically selling, and maybe some high traffic placement. Certainly, margins are wide. They can change by product, right? Frozen meat might be at a very different margin than fresh produce that has a greater shrinkage. But, if we want to have a starting place, you can kind of assume a retail margin around 30 to 40%. Co-op, we're at about 35%. margin for produce and a lower margin for frozen meat. And so if you're, again, going into your grocery and you're spying, you're like, I don't know, can I sell these people something? It might be fair to start by doing a little research and saying, well, what's that being sold for on the shelf? Okay, let me back it out using that 30 to 40% margin. Some sell them for $1.99 a pound. Simple math, multiply it by 0.35 to find the margin, and you can you're kind of in the ballpark. They're buying it for about $1.30. So a little bit of thinking it through is very helpful as you're trying to figure out if grocery makes sense for you as an operator. And my big message is I think really what we ought to think about is trying to play a long game with grocers. In many respects, I like to think of ourselves as partners in turnover, right? We're trying to do the same thing. And you can help that grocer by being a good partner in getting that product to turn over and your product to turn over. And a lot of it does come down to how we're handling product. This issue about freshness and well-handled product matters. It matters quite a bit. So if you have, I don't know, I keep going back to this case of lettuce. But if you had a good case of lettuce that was well handled in comparison to some California lettuce, that may hold, if you did it right, should hold longer. So even if they're having to buy that whole case, that freshness will allow it a longer shelf life. But also in terms of partnership, we can support one another in terms of cross-marketing and merchandising support. So in terms of cross-merchandising, or cross-marketing, I should say, what I mean by that is we heard Renee talk a little bit about signage that would be in a grocery in order to tell the story of the farm operator. Here's an example of how we're doing that with little info sheets at our co-op in DL. So we kind of have a set template that we're using. And on the right is an example from Ferndale Market. Here's an operation that is excellent at providing resources, materials that are useful for grocers to market their product. Ferndale Market, as we're going up to the Thanksgiving season, a big season for people that sell turkeys, send print materials about cooking turkeys, about the Ferndale birds. They have shelf talkers that you can stick on a glass case, but they also provide via Google folder here, I don't know, like 10 different videos that the grocer can use to promote their product, pictures that the grocer can use to promote their product. They're really good at this. And there's nothing stopping any of us as operators in trying to be a good partner in that way of helping that grocer get our product sold, just as the grocer wants to help sell your product, as they'll consistently do. Another piece that you could see with being a good partner is sharing risk. If so, you've been online with me in some kind of workshop before, for the past, I don't know, 9 years, I've done this produce stand on consignment with Falls Baking in Fergus Falls. And I drop off once a week. They handle it. I say, thank you, see you later. And they keep track of sales for their point of sale and give me a check about once a month or every 6 weeks or whenever we get around to it, kind of deal. It works really well. And so here's an example of kind of a shared risk situation that we also did with the co-op when we first opened. And we had most of our produce people, including myself, who, again, a small startup grocer, or again, a small grocer might be very interested in this, where they have a turnover issue, is sharing the risk through some kind of consignment. There's a cost related in the tracking of that consignment and those consignment sales, but it's one way to share the risk as mutual partners. And certainly a partnership is, as we've done at the co-op as well, as your local grocer may be one of your best CSA drop sites, right? We've done that ourselves. We've also hosted farmers markets at the co-op, and a number of co-ops, say like Harmony in my neck of the woods, you know, they have a one-time annual thing. It's a way of featuring their local vendors. But we've also hosted, you know, my little farm stand here on the right or down below every Friday, and at the co-op as well. So there are ways of kind of sharing traffic, getting folks from my business to your business, which again is a great partnership. So if I'm going to bring this thing home, you might say, Ryan, you're just trying to sell me on selling to grocers. It sounds like a pain in the butt because they are high maintenance and they want perfect stuff. And I got to check in a certain way and I got to call them on a given day. And it just seems like, I don't know if this makes sense. And that's fine. You don't have to sell to a grocery. That's your call. But if we back up a little bit, if we think about our own individual business, I'm one that's firmly believes that there's magic in the marketing mix. Too often, at least speaking for produce people, we sell at one farmer's market and we have one chance to sell the stuff we raised. And if it rains that day, we're screwed, right? But if you have a marketing mix and you have multiple outlets, you have that opportunity to get what you raise sold. And so you have these competing pricing things, you have competing marketing costs, which takes a little forethought in you figuring out, does this make sense in the mix? But I do want to invite you to say, what is my overall mix? And are we reaching our goals, our profit goals and sales goals by the mix that we have? And grocery may be part of that mix. Part of that mix is understanding how to grade and sort well and getting the right product to that right outlet. You might get away with the non-perfect stuff in another outlet that you might not in the world of grocery. And that's also part of the mix. A resource that I think is absolutely necessary, especially in the world of produce, if you're like, I don't know what you're talking about with post-harvest handling. This is such an important part of doing quality produce that, you know, like just stop right now. Like don't even try to sell anything in my mind until you start getting a handle on post-harvest handling well. One great resource is at MISA. They have two resources, one called Packing House Rules about packing house processes and design issues and ideas. There's also this PDF of a presentation that was done by, you know, three veterans that I think really good in terms of produce people, in terms of harvest sale, vegetable handling. And here's me trying to look tough by, you know, my wash tub here. It doesn't need to be fancy, right? Nobody says you have to like line the whole world with like stainless steel or something in order to do this right. But we do need to care for that produce well, and there's no way I can touch that in 20 minutes. So my last offer to you is that I am doing some business coaching now with my extension hat on, especially as operators are looking to kind of a post-pandemic world. And a lot of us are trying to figure out, should I change how I market? Should I change my level of production, how I'm producing or what I'm producing? There's been such an influx in terms of business in the food business in the past year that seemed appropriate to offer some coaching. So 3-call process, we'll sit and sort some things out, hopefully get some goals that you can act on this year. So with that, I will stop.
Great, thank you, Ryan. Well, we are doing really good for time. So we have ample time for questions, folks, if now's your opportunity, or if there's something that you're thinking about that, you know, isn't exactly what was covered, we can try to answer that as well. Ryan and Renee gave us lots of content to digest. We do have one question I see that came in. It says, we can guess about the cost the co-op is paying, but what about asking co-ops what their current sales numbers are? For example, if they already have a pork producer and I want them to buy frozen pork, my first thought is to find out how much they sell per month so I know if I could even try to fill their need. If my product has more appealing raising claims at a similar or slightly higher cost. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, it's just a straight up question. you know? There's no harm in asking the question, right? I mean, again, I'd love you to get in the mind of that, that buyer in terms of, just like you have a product mix for the farm, right? They have this product mix that they're always trying to juggle. And so the buyer's point of view is like, is this different enough that it's going to fill a different niche or meet the needs of a new customer or new sales, as compared to just swapping out what might be a mainline product, right? So if you're like, hey, you know what? I know you guys at Lakewood are, you've carried Beelers for 30 years, but just swap that out. Like, that probably isn't going to happen. But if it's different enough that it would be a new niche in addition to it, I think it would make sense, because I don't think the question is, can I deal all your needs? I don't think that's the right question. There's obviously already product in the shelf or in the case. I think the question is, does my product complement or bring something different in comparison to what's currently being sold? And to ask, like, what are those sales? I don't know. I would give you that answer. I mean, maybe I'm more transparent than most, but I don't see why not.
Great. Do you know if there is a good source for packaging materials like berry baskets, plastic bags, produce boxes, etc. in Minnesota?
Yeah, Jordan Seeds is your primary one. Jordan Seeds and Woodbury, Jordan.
And it looks like Melissa followed up with another recommendation of Glacier Valley in Wisconsin, and Uline also has some inventory. What other questions do you folks have? Or observations, comments? It can be an open discussion as well.
Yeah.
I actually have some comments, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
So, Ryan, I'm a grocer, and I definitely agree with trying to meet the needs of the grocer, even though we might be particular. Example today, getting prepared for this, I was getting my other work done, and I was in the middle of a schedule, which is very difficult to write. And a gentleman just showed up, knocked on the door, said he wanted to talk with me. He had some cleaner, listed different businesses in the area, and wanted to show me how his cleaner worked and demonstrate it for me to use his service. I didn't even have 10 seconds, and it was very difficult, and he didn't even have a business card.
Right.
So he had me write his number down, and I probably won't even honestly call him back because I was not in the right mind frame. I didn't have time. He didn't come prepared. So those little things do mean a lot.
Well, Shanda, say I'm produce person, and I did want to sell you some produce this year. Tell me what would be a good approach.
A phone call to say, hey, when could I come in would have been great, because I had no time.
Yep. I
was as polite as I could be without being rude, because I said I was deep in thought. I have deadlines. I have lots of deadlines. I only have so much time to get stuff done. You can't just pop in and expect me to devote the right time and mind frame to you, unless I can prepare a little bit.
What would you like me to bring when I did meet you?
A list of products you would have, and what prices you would want for them.
Mm-hmm. And say, and then, hey, I'm kind of new to this grocery thing. I've been doing a farmer's market 5-6 years.
Yep.
I feel good about my product. Hey, would you give me a sense about what things you might think work, or what pricing might work for you? Something like that.
Yeah. I've only had a couple farmer things in here, but I do have another bakery from a different town that brings their product in. And I was going to mention that too. The invoice, they have just a plain blank sheet, and they just write down how many of each they bring, which is wonderful. And they have a stamp with their business name and address. There was no phone number on there. So when I took over this position, I couldn't even call them and find out what my total was, because there was no phone number. And they're old school. They have no website, no
Sure.
social media. So
Yeah, I think you're underlining for me what you're saying is, if we want somebody to buy something from us, we need to make it as easy as possible. We are the ones selling it, right?
Correct.
And so thinking of some of these details is a good thing. And it's not like, don't be scared away because there's so many details I can't deal with it. We're
No.
going to learn with time, right? But I've had the exact same thing. It's a person that writes all the checks for the co-op. I've got multiple invoices where people never write down a price.
Mhm.
They get their checks 6 weeks late because I got to find them. I'm like,
Exactly.
me. This is like just the basics, folks, the basics. And so
Mhm.
there is some kind of crazy making, right?
Mhm.
That if we just got over the crazy making, hey, I think we'd be in a good position.
Right. I want you to do your best to sell your product to me because I'm going to do my best to sell my product to my customers.
I think that's that partnership thing. I think if we're both doing our thing, that's what we want at the end of the day, right? That
Exactly.
comes in and says, I love this grocery. I love this operator. This is great. Look it's like chocolate and peanut butter, all stuck. It's fabulous. Couldn't get any better,
Mhm.
But the logistics have to get right on the back end. So
Well, yeah.
that's right. We're good.
Ryan, we have a question that came in. If you could review the retailer margin, this, I'm guessing grower is, or person is seeking pricing information and how to price the produce.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can just review the retailer margin.
Yeah. So depending on the operation, you could have a difference of margin, right? For the co-op, and Shanda wants to tell us her margin, we're at about 35% margin, right? Because we have a lot of shrinkage. Where are you at?
Right. It's 30 to 40. When the new owner took over this store, his percentage was 40 to 50. We had a lot of shrink, so my motto is make less, sell more. So I lowered the percentages.
Yep. So the way you do a margin, right? So what the grocer is doing is they're buying something from you for $1.30. The formula for a margin is 1 over, in parentheses, 1 minus the margin. So if you had 35%, you're essentially taking the price, dividing by 0.65. Did you follow that math? 1 minus the margin. 35% would get us to 0.65. So price I pay you divided by 0.65. So if you wanted to get, what they're paying at a 35% margin, you're multiplying by 1 minus the margin. So if something's $1.99 in my example, if I multiply it by 0.65, that's pretty much what as a grocer, I'm buying that product for. Anyway, you made 40% margin, you multiply it by 0.6. 30% margin, multiply it by 0.7. But it gives you some sense about where they're at, right? And good grocers are always monkeying with margins. If you have a very expensive product, you might just put a lower margin on it just in order that it seems like a reasonable number. But that should be the exception rather than the rule. Otherwise, grocers will drive themselves crazy because they have thousands and thousands of products. And that's, Renee, you're sitting there in a grocery. What do you got to say about all this?
I was thinking that sounded right. I mean, sometimes we'll have a new product come in, or if there's like what we started doing, is if we have a local product that we really believe in, it's not selling very well, sometimes we'll do like a temporary coupon that marketing will fund to try to get people to buy it. But margin is definitely an issue because we know it's more expensive to grow local, organic, or sustainably raised, or IPM veggies and stuff. And but yeah, you've got lots of rent to pay and staff to pay. And so the margin is, I think, about right there. In non-COVID times, we have open book management where once a week we meet at the stores and we go over all the margin results, and we haven't had that for the last year or so. But I think that sounds about right to me as well, around 30%.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a question that came in, the difference between margin and markup.
Oh, goodness. No, let's see, put me on the spot here. Okay. So a margin is this. This is how we think of a margin. For every dollar of sale, it's what you're either keeping or giving away, right? So a 35% margin, right? Myself as a grocer, for $1 a sale, I'm keeping 35 cents. Does that make sense? Whereas a markup is like, if you took something and you just added a percentage to it, that isn't necessarily, if you add 30% to something, doesn't mean that for every $1 of sale, you're keeping 30%. You're just adding 30% to it, which would be different if you're adding 30% to 60 cents, or if you're adding 30% to a $280, right? So yeah, it's 1 minus the margin is how you'd calculate it, versus multiplied by 1.3, right? If you have 30% margin, be the cost divided by 1 minus the margin. A markup would be a 30% margin, a 30% markup would be take the cost and multiply it by 1.3. Those are different things. Melissa's like, I don't know, you're hurting my head, Ryan. That was maybe a grand diversion. Do some, yeah, there we go.
I have a question.
Our basic calculators online, just use that.
Yeah. I was going to say too, like most grocers, like the profit they make is like what, 2 cents for every $1. It's like the profit is very, very narrow.
I'm wondering if anybody has experience with selling to C-stores. We have a couple of convenience stores that are really the only food source in town that have expressed some interest in buying. Is it a whole different situation with margin? I know that they have marketing schemes with their suppliers that they kind of have to buy into. Any advice would be helpful.
I know I was hanging out with I was going to sell some equipment to a C-store operator. We had a good discussion here last week. It's not like I'm hanging out with C-store operators all the time, but my general understanding is that they are used to a much higher margin than a traditional mainline grocery. Right? They're selling cigarettes and candy all day long.
Right.
So I would expect that their margins would be higher. And whether it's a grocery or it's a C-store, I mean, depending on the brand and the line that they're with, they can be stuck in given contracts. I don't really know. I've never tried to sell to a C-store. But if they're expressing some interest, I don't see why not. I mean, more than likely their distributor doesn't really deal much with fresh anything. And that's part of their issue, right? They say, why don't C-stores have any fresh product? Well, part of it is people don't go there to buy fresh product. But part of it is that their wholesalers they don't really deal much with fresh product. They aren't co-op partners, right? They're a wholesaler for C-stores. And that's the stuff they specialize in, powdered donuts and stuff. So, I don't know, anybody have experience selling to a C-store? I don't claim to be an expert in this.
Oh. It sounds like no one has that experience. Good question, though. Any other questions we have from folks or comments? Hearing none. Last call. All right. Thank you again, Ryan and Renee. We now will transition to breakout rooms. And we have kind of an activity thinking about packaging specifically. And given what we've heard about the marketing from Renee and product handling and some of the merchandising and working with farmer growers from Ryan, kind of we'll talk about the packaging activity in your breakout rooms. Here are the questions for that. I'll put this in the chat. Send to everyone. And then facilitators, the link is in the facilitator notes to share your screen once you get into your breakout rooms. And so we'll have a good 10 minutes, maybe a little bit more for conversation. And if it doesn't take the whole time, you can do a little break, and then we'll come back together at the end. So Anna, if you would be willing to put us into breakout rooms, and folks, we'll see you in just a bit, in about 10 minutes. Just a report back, starting with the Northeast region. And David, if you nominated someone from your group, or if you want to go ahead and report back kind of what your discussion was around these two products.
I think one of the others can talk about it, but there's definitely differences, and Kelly, Marlies, would you like to share?
Marlies, do you want to go? Well, we'll just say that there's a lot of packaging. It looks pretty slick, the one on the left, and it looks like you're getting as much plastic as you are arugula. The one on the right is kind of sweet, and it looks like the farmer might have coordinated with the store to make sure that both labels fit. But the Ziploc bag is not really super appealing. They could have probably made a better choice on the bag, and maybe even bunched the parsley in the bag. Yeah, I think for somebody who's looking for a local product, probably the choice would be the one on the right, even though it's in a Ziploc bag.
Interesting, great.
And a question that came up, and I don't know if anyone wants to answer it, or those labels, non-GMO, they have to be certified. This looks like a bigger operation in Minnesota. Which labels can you use and which can't? Maybe someone can address that at some point in your local packaging.
That is an excellent question. I don't have the answer off the top of my head. Does someone else know? You want to?
Yeah, I believe that FDA has a guideline you can follow, and it's very strict and it's very, very lengthy. But there are very specific guidelines to follow about labeling. It's worth a webinar all on its own. You typically can get away with things until you get caught, and they won't hurt you. They'll just tell you to stop.
Thanks, Greg. All right, thanks.
With meat, it's pretty much similar. Anything you're saying about a raising claim has got to be approved.
Good to know. Thank you for piping in.
So AURI also might have resources on that. I think I may have seen a long time ago.
All right, let's go on to the Northwest/West Central regions. And Shannon, if you want to report back, or if there's someone from your group that would be willing to.
Sure, I'll start off, and if anybody wants to join in, they certainly can. As we looked at these, I guess it was pointed out right away that the Minnesota grown sticker was pretty important on the right, but there isn't any other information to go with that. So everybody's eyes kind of went to the one on the far left. Very clean, nice design with the yellow and gold that looks like a bee and has local on it. So the question that kind of came up and we talked about is including that sort of clean, clear messaging along with the Minnesota grown branding, if that was allowed or how that might happen. So feeling like that was pretty important. But the one on the left, I guess the consensus was the one that caught everybody's eye, and the one that we thought was maybe the best in this grouping.
Yeah, and this the Minnesota grown sticker is available to both producers and to grocery stores, and they have a number of free materials, and they also have a cost share for like labeling or like larger banners, or like you want to get the Minnesota grown on your own logo with your own content as well. They have, I want to say it's up to $250, but we can check. That's on the Minnesota grown website. So there's definitely a possibility of combining the two.
That was one of the questions, whether it was a free resource or if there was some sort of cost sharing in it. I guess it depends on the scale that you're talking about. So,
yep.
Thank you for that.
I believe they have, I can turn my camera on.
I believe when you have your Minnesota Grown membership, which isn't it is it $25?
I believe so.
$25. Then you get free things like the labeling stickers, twist ties, bags. They have all kinds of free resources like that with your membership.
Great. All right. And then was there any other comments from Northwest? Shannon, thank you for reporting back.
I'll just defer to our group if there's anything else that I missed.
All right. We'll jump to the next one. The Central Region. Greg, if you want to report back, or if there's someone from your group.
Yeah, well, I'll report back. If anybody in the group wants to interrupt me and talk over me, I absolutely do not mind at all. So please feel free to do that. So one of the issues here was on the left. We're concerned that the cheese isn't packed tightly enough. And it's to think about your packaging, make sure that it's appropriate for your product. So we don't want any mold or anything like that going on with this cheese. Another thing we didn't realize until some folks were Googling it was that Bent River is the actual kind of cheese. We couldn't figure out what kind of cheese it is. On the right, it looks like it's blue cheese. We know it says blue cheese right there. But on the left, we didn't know what's in there, but it turns out it's Bent River cheese, and Alamar is the company. So that was confusing. Also, somebody looked up the price. This is more than a $20 block of cheese. So if you're going to have something priced as a premium like that, you might really want to consider really beefing up the packaging and make it clear that it is a premium product, so that you can sort of be enticing to people to sell that product at that premium price. On the right, we have an issue where there's yellow text on top of a yellow cheese, and it's difficult to see, and it doesn't really stick out. It doesn't pop at you. And so although it says Caves of Faribault, you aren't going to really see it as a local product, just like that. Now on the left, it says somewhere on there, also in very small print, I think Mankato, is that where? I can't even see that, it's too small. I know of Cedar Summit Farm as a local product, or a local farm, but others that might not know that wouldn't know that it's local. So make sure you're getting your messaging, the things you want to message, get those across to everybody else.
Excellent. Great. Thank you, Central Region.
Anybody else before I move, want to say anything? All right. We're good. Thanks.
And then last but not least, we have the South/Southeast region. And Alma or Kathy or someone from your region want to report back?
I can jump in, but we have some experts that were in our small group on really who have done meat work. So it was really a really informed discussion about the package on the left is really, modern, up to date, what kind of people expect in a retail. The picture on the right is like someone said, this looks like my childhood, the beef we used to get in the childhood. And so there's really a lot of discussion about how meat packaging can evolve. Talking about barcodes, what you need to do to get the label for a lot of small and medium-sized farms working with equal to processors. How do you get that sophisticated, beautiful label to the USDA inspected facility, and what that entails, which it's, it sounds like in some cases, what I heard from the group was that depending on your scale, really, you should do some point of sale marketing, tell your story, have some shelf information that shows, rather than, like a product has to have label approvals, and something I hadn't heard of before, FFIS approval, that is at the meat processor level with those labels. So, we all know meat's a little more sensitive in terms of labeling. So I would there's experts in our committee. Is there anyone else wanted to chime in about the label issue, please?
So I put a link into the,
Sarah was going to say something.
oh,
Sarah,
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Sarah. What were you going to say?
Sorry. Just that it feels to me, having been managed retail butcher shops and been in USDA meat processing and also being a farmer producer, that who you work with in terms of your meat processor is really one of the biggest determinants of how you're going to be able to label and what they're willing to do to work with you, which at the end of the day is about scale and how much money you're able to bring them. And then scale is definitely determinant if you're able to afford the printing of those approved labels for use in their facility. But that does tie you to the facility with their number on it.
Really great to have Sarah in our group with a lot of expertise on the meat issue. Thank you, Sarah. Hope we continue to connect through the years on this stuff.
Excellent.
Anyone else from our group want to chime in? Okay.
All right, so we ended, that's what I have for the activities. Maybe we have any closing questions or thoughts or comments that people want to make, but this is the wrap up for our series. And again, we appreciate everyone joining. Does anyone have any last comments or questions? Feel free to unmute or put them in the chat. All right. And my contact information is on there. In the coming months, we will be doing more farm to grocery connections. So watch your emails. Now that we have some of your contact information, we hope to keep connecting. So thank you, everyone. And we really, really appreciate all of you joining.